nice.
So we should try to...
Oh, you extended our notes a lot.
Well, I just pasted in everything we didn't get to from episode 2. I didn't really add much new stuff. I just put stuff in a more convenient place so we didn't have to keep flipping back and forth.
Okay. I decided I could open it on my iPad and not annoy you with typing.
Ooh. I do have it.
Truly.
Wait a minute.
Did it just occur to you that you also own an iPad?
Well, not only that, but that it happened to be within arm's reach. So,
to be fair, that's why I opened it on mine also.
Yeah. So, just to let you know, so in order to enable like using, well, actually, this is not so true. But I'm also coming into the bedroom. Yes.
If only I had a sound effects of crickets. I must have that somewhere.
Yeah, we can insert them later. The sound, not the actual
That's
crickets.
what she said.
What was I going to say?
Are there crickets in Malaysia?
I do hear them. Yeah, not so much. I mean, there are many insects. Our department is overrun with them actually a lot of the time, but not so much crickets.
Are they like the creepy giant tropical ones?
I haven't seen a cricket up close. The cockroaches get pretty big.
Yeah, I remember the cockroaches in Bermuda were enormous.
Yeah.
Like walking Twinkies.
You just put me off Twinkies for a while.
I thought they didn't make Twinkies anymore. Did that company ever come back?
I think someone bought the trademark.
Was it you?
It was not me. But I think they have appeared back again, but I'm not sure.
That could just be the backlog of Twinkies, actually.
Although, this can actually be real science. Although we should introduce ourselves in a minute. But that whole thing about Twinkies lasting forever is completely false, right?
No, I didn't actually. I mean, I just assumed that they were sort of dry and sugary, both which make things last for a long time. And
well, yeah, this is a real. This is kind of a real thing. I have this is a rant of mine, which I guess we could do. Which
all right, cue the rant.
Well, just that. I mean, people talk about Twinkies like they're some magical, future food full of preservatives and stuff. And I'm sure they have some preservatives in them, but if you look at the ingredients, Twinkies really are just cake. And, sugar-based filling. There's nothing magical about them, and they're, shrink-wrapped in plastic to keep microorganisms out. It really isn't rocket science. They have a shelf life of like a couple of weeks, just like any old piece of bread does.
Really? No. Well, I guess you mean once they're open?
No, I mean, they have I've not scientifically tested this, but, if you look on the side of the box, they have a sell-by date of a couple of weeks from whatever time it is at that time, usually. And
oh, really?
Yeah, and much like actual bread, I assume, the main thing that would happen if you ate them after that is they would just be stale, but they're not some, and it is true that they are sealed in, a relatively sterile environment, so not much can get to them. Unlike your regular bread, which...
yeah, it's just sort of in a bag.
It's in plastic, but yeah, there's not much keeping like the mold spores out. So, there's nothing... I'm sure there are preservatives in Twinkies. I have not looked at the actual recipe recently, but I definitely heard like, at some point I came upon a Twinkie representative going like, it's really just bread and sugar. I mean, it's not really good for you, but it's not going to like outlast the, the cockroaches when the nuclear apocalypse comes.
So I just Googled it, and there's only one actual preservative apparently, which is sorbic acid.
Sorbic acid?
Yeah, but that's not, like industrial strength bleach or anything.
No.
It's funny because there's all these like panicky things like, oh my god, it comes from rocks and natural gas, which is, I think, just because the Twinkie ingredients have carbon in them.
Yeah. Well, and this is my whole thing. This is, what they have a name for this, and it's the naturalistic fallacy, right? There's really two parts of this. One of which is that Twinkies don't actually have many more quote-unquote artificial ingredients than the bread that you would bake, at home with your hands.
Wow. It's only because I can't get a hold of like some of these things.
Yeah. But I mean, if you do look at the Twinkie recipe, right, it's mostly like flour, sugar, Probably has some eggs in it, water, baking soda. You know.
Yeah, or, it has, like, the active ingredients of all those. Whoa, Twinkies were initially banana-flavored?
Yeah. I think they still have the banana-flavored ones, actually, but regular cream is much more popular now.
I would totally try a banana one. Have you ever had a fried one?
Not only have I had a fried one, I think didn't we do that in my... Well, you didn't come to the deep frying party that I had that one time, did you? I think you were otherwise disposed, weren't you?
Anyways, they're delicious. You should eat them. Except you will die. It's funny, because if you didn't tell people it was a Twinkie, you could probably pass it off as a very classy dessert.
Well, this is the other thing. This is another whole rant I have, which is the rarity of food. Like, the illusion that some fancy restaurant food is better tasting than, I don't know what you would want to say, like a Big Mac or something like that. Like, I agree that fancy restaurant food is also very tasty, but they have top men working on making the Big Mac as tasty as possible for the price point it is. So,
definitely.
If the Big Mac were the rare item, and I was actually just thinking this the other day because I went somewhere that we had creme brulee, and I was thinking, creme brulee is actually very simple, right? If this were commonly available, would it be as fancy sounding as it is?
Well, it's funny you say that, because everything sounds fancy up here because it's in French. Then you realize that it's actually just like poutine is really just French fries, cheese, and gravy.
Yeah.
Which are delicious. But it's sort of weird to see a whole, oh, you must try this. It's got fried things and cheese.
Yeah. Well, this is the other, by the way, and creme brulee just literally doesn't it mean burnt cream? I think that's what brulee means. So, nothing too fancy about it, right? It's just cream and sugar and stuff.
There might be some eggs in there.
Well, yeah, but the same things that are in all tasty sweet things, basically, right? In different proportions.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But, what was it? Shoot, I hold on, I have to reboot the system. There was a glitch in the Matrix. There are only so many basic tastes that, we like the taste of fat. We like umami. We like sugar. We like salt in the right ways. And there are various ways of delivering those to you, but it's not really too hard to make a thing that tastes good to humans,
Yeah, no, depends on who's cooking.
Well, yeah. But in other words, poutine is delicious, and creme brulee is delicious, and, Big Macs are delicious, and, fancy pants food is also delicious, but, there are lots of studies showing that people prefer things that they have paid more money for, right? Like if something is presented to them as more expensive, or if they have actually paid more money for it, they do perceive it as being better as the same, versus the same thing at a lower price point.
Oh yeah, there's a cool study where they do that with wine, where they basically swap the bottles around, and people are like, "Oh, this expensive wine is delicious." Like, "Oh, it's actually $2 Chuck."
Yeah, well, that's funny because actually, just before you dialed in, I was looking at an article, one of many articles over the years that I've seen. Just yet another one saying wine tasting is basically completely useless. Now, I haven't read this particular one because we started the call just as I was loading it up, but. Many, many studies over the years show that a lot of people, even who claim to be experts, not only can't tell good wine from bad wine sometimes in blindfolded taste tests, or are easily tricked by swapping the labels, but, if you just add red food coloring to white wine, they sometimes can't even tell the difference between red and white wine, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah. They will now wine people, whose business it is to sound important about wine and, try to sell you more wine, will dispute these studies on various grounds. But yeah, they've done this with I believe it's called winology. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but the science of wine tasting. They've done it with students in wine tasting and wine reviewers and stuff, and even experts. Supposedly can't even really tell red from white under double-blind type conditions.
Do you know the orange juice experiment, which is sort of related to that?
No, what's that one?
So they took these people, right, and they put them in a little room where they could control the lights very carefully. Yeah. And they gave them a glass of orange juice. And, people drink it. They're like, oh, this is good orange juice.
Yep.
Except the lights were set up so that the orange juice was actually dyed blue.
Okay.
And And I guess you just don't have any blue in your lights, right? So it still looks orange.
Right.
And so then they turn on the lights or turn off the lights, however. They change the lights, and the orange juice appears blue. And like people are all of a sudden revolted. I think they got people to vomit.
That's pretty good. Any study where you can make people vomit by participating, I usually chalk up to a success.
It's true. As opposed to, the reviews you get, which make you want to vomit.
Well, yeah. Yes, that usually comes at a later stage.
So this is ironic and hilarious.
That's called revising and resubmitting your lunch. Go ahead.
So I was trying to track down the Twinkie ingredients. And there's this photographer guy who seems like sort of a scaremongery type.
Yep.
Apparently these ingredients are also used in sheetrock, shampoo, and rocket fuel. One of them is cellulose gum, which is in like basically every plant ever.
Right.
And presumably the backing of sheetrock. But anyways, so he has a website where he's photographed each of the ingredients.
Right.
Except it's broken, and the only ingredient that shows up when you click on all 37 of them is a picture of flour.
Nice. So there's definitely flour in there. God forbid.
Apparently 37 different kinds of flour.
For Twinkies?
Well, no, it's supposed to show you like sugar and all the preservatives.
Oh, okay, right. Oh, I see. They just all show up as flour.
Yes.
Okay. That's funny. Well, and yeah, I mean, this is the huge problem I have, which I was starting to say, like, that's the naturalistic fallacy, right? That that things are better for you if they are natural.
Arsenic is natural.
Well, exactly. Hemlock, pretty natural, right? All kinds of poisonous things, quite natural.
No, it was boiled and put in a cup by a big tree.
Well, that is true. That is, I guess there's some processing there. Clearly, it's the processing that makes the hemlock kill you. If you just
definitely
eat the plant, you're totally fine. That long-running debate between Skelly and her friend, right?
No.
Oh, this is well, all right.
Oh, is this Bread Nature's Napkin?
Yeah. So, which is a great story that I'd love to tell on her behalf. We should get Skelly on the podcast at some point, actually. But anyway, for the benefit of our for the benefit of our listeners, basically, our friend Lori Skelly, fellow neuroscientist, I think this was in high school. Her friend was eating something and got like a little sauce or something on his, on his cheek or on his lip, and didn't have an actual napkin with him. So he picked up a piece of his bread that he was, came with his spaghetti or whatever, and wiped it off his face and went, bread, nature's napkin. Which, of course, because she's Skelly, provoked her to say, well, bread is really no more natural than a napkin. You have to mix the wheat with other things and pound it and bake it and, so forth, which is somewhat similar to the process that, tree fibers go through when they're being made into napkins. And thus began a years-long debate, which I gather involved, a fair bit of research, as to which was actually more natural, bread or a napkin. So
yeah, I remember that's come up within the last year, I think, on Facebook.
Oh, between us and Skelly.
I don't even think we were involved. I think it was some other person.
Oh, somebody else raised the bread versus napkin issue. Well, it is an interesting debate, right? Because the bread feels like, you think bread, what's more natural than bread? But, bread is a processed food just like anything else. Merely baking something is processing it. But,
I don't have any deep thoughts on that, sorry.
Well, no, that's okay. But just getting back to the basic rant, I mean, and then lots of things that are not natural are very good for you also, right? Like plenty of medications are not so natural. Those are kind of good for you in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, right, like the one that kills me always is monosodium glutamate. MSG, right? Monosodium glutamate.
It doesn't pass the blood-brain barrier. Sorry.
Well, right, because people think something. I mean, it's true that MSG. Well, in a sense, MSG is not natural in the sense that when you add it to your food as like a, sprinkle it on your food like salt. Yeah, it's been processed in some way to get it into the salt shaker, but so has salt for that matter, right?
Well, it's funny you say that because I've heard, and I'm not totally sure if this is true, that the part of the MSG which is bad for you is not the glutamate, which everyone says messes with your brain, but the fact that you're also adding a whack load of salt to your food.
Yeah, Although we're already too many layers deep. But there's a lot of research coming out now, or a lot of competing viewpoints coming out saying that sodium is not actually all that responsible for hypertension. I don't know if you've seen any of that.
Oh, do you remember we tried to figure this out our first year of grad school? Whether it was just like changes in the ion concentration?
I don't remember trying to figure that out, but it sounds like something we would do, yeah.
Yeah, so I saw this poster, and basically everything affects your blood pressure. Like everything.
Well, yeah. I mean,
it's like a poster-sized poster with a bunch of arrows and lines labeled in like 6-point font.
Yeah.
I kind of want to get a copy. It was amazing in terms of just like,
Well, it makes it, and I believe again, this is a longer topic, and I haven't done the research recently enough to be eloquent about it, but it sort of makes sense. Now, some people that are predisposed to hypertension, it is certainly true, right, that if you eat more salt, your system will generally retain more water to get the sodium concentration kind of in balance, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the blood pressure issue comes from, right? Is that you are retaining more fluid in your bloodstream overall. But as these researchers who contest this viewpoint would say, you do have kidneys. They're pretty good at filtering things out of your blood so as to maintain the optimal balance of things, right? So, it's not like you have no way of compensating when you eat a truckload of salt, right?
Well, I mean, we're both still alive.
Right. And I think the jury's still out on exactly to what extent it's true, but it does seem like unless you are genetically predisposed to have hypertension and you want to artificially cut your salt intake to like take away any source of anything that could even temporarily raise your blood pressure. I wish I could find the study. Maybe I can find it again offline. Where they basically showed that even several times the normal human salt intake didn't really increase hypertension. I believe it was in rats. And furthermore, that it's actually impossible to healthily meet some of the guidelines for for sodium intake. That actually you can't eat even like a well-balanced diet and keep your sodium intake as low as it's sometimes recommended to be.
Yeah, the new ones where they basically tell you to eat, like 30% less salt. I think you can't get the right amount of potassium in that.
That's what it was. That's exactly what it was. Like the way that these things are present in foods. Yeah, if you eat as little sodium as they recommend, you actually get less potassium than you're supposed to get, which is a problem unto itself.
Yeah, it's actually weird. Do you know how they do this? It's just like a massive linear programming thing.
How they do what exactly?
So they try to figure out, like a diet.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Especially for like astronauts. They just have this like huge set of equations and they solve them. But I read somewhere the initial models didn't really work because they're just like, you should eat, I think it was potatoes. You should eat like 10 pounds of potatoes and like half a cup of milk.
Right.
Like, yeah, people are not going to go for that.
I mean, that's the problem, right? Because that probably is objectively true. That would give you a perfectly balanced diet. But it's a little tricky to make that into a meal.
Well, especially one that you'd eat, more than once.
Well, yeah.
I think the potatoes and milk have everything other than like molybdenum, which you in theory could get from the dirt on the potatoes.
Nice. So you just eat the potato raw and you're good to go.
Oh, my stomach hurts just thinking about that.
I feel like there's an Irish
and potato. I'm Irish.
I was just going to say, I feel like there's an Irish potato famine joke in here somewhere, but, I know your people are still sensitive about that one. Yeah, speaking of the Irish potato famine, you know what also is a completely complete meal is babies, Irish babies.
I read that. It's a very modest proposal, actually.
Yeah, it's the Swift diet, I believe, is what that's called. That would actually be an awesome name for a diet.
I wonder if you could sell a diet book like that.
Well, ideally, what you
want to start another podcast?
That would be an excellent kind of Trojan horse sell. Is to kind of write one of these 200-page diet books. Which of course any diet book only needs to be about 3 pages long, right?
Well, eat less crap, try exercising.
Well, even that, but if you're on the Atkins diet, you could summarize the Atkins diet in like 2 paragraphs. You don't need to sell a 200-page book explaining the philosophy of the Atkins diet,
Yeah, that's true. I often wonder how much the Atkins diet is just that, like, you get sick of eating like giant slabs of meat every day, and so you eat less of it.
Yeah, that's part of it, I think.
Didn't he die of a heart attack anyway?
No, I think that's an urban myth. I think he fell down the stairs or something and hit his head.
Oh.
After tripping over a side of beef, of course.
All the bacon grease on the stairs.
Yes, exactly. There was so much cheese and accumulated, egg yolk and everything on his floor that he just couldn't walk upright anymore.
Oh, you're right. He slipped on icy pavement.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Was he at least in like a meat locker or something?
No, he had a heart attack the year before.
Maybe that's where it came from. He did have a heart attack, but
it was caused by a chronic infection. Man, this urban legend is terrible.
Yeah. Well, time to fire up the meat again, I guess. I feel like, shoot. We were on something, though. Now I've lost it again.
I think we were ranting.
Bread and napkins. I'm going to have to cut this out. But we were...
naturalistic fallacy.
Well, we were on that... Oh, the MSG thing. We should maybe talk about the sodium debate at some later point, though, because I think that's interesting. But, yeah. So, MSG, people think it's so scary because it has this scary-sounding name, right? Monosodium glutamate. But, as you've said, the sodium... So, this is just a two-part molecule, right? Well, basically. Where the monosodium just means an atom of sodium, which you may know from simple table salt, right? That's also half of table salt. And glutamate, or it's actually, I guess, glutamic acid, right?
Well, yeah, it's the salt. It's the sodium salt of glutamic acid.
Right. Which you may recognize as being one of the most, well, I guess all of them are important, but one of the most prevalent neurotransmitters in your brain, right? So
I would say it's the most important. Well, that and GABA are the most important.
I mean, you'd kind of be screwed without any, like you wouldn't be a functioning organism without any of them. But yes, there's definitely the most glutamate.
Well, we're going to come back to that in a second. With
right.
My exciting bit of the week.
Okay, cool. We'll hold that off. But anyway, yes, as you mentioned, all of the action of that. So all MSG seems to really do is, the sodium bit is salty on your tongue, and the glutamic acid, I think it does help to excite your taste buds more, right? Because they are sensory neurons.
Well, there are acid-sensing ones.
Well, that's true. But my impression was that they also had, maybe I could be wrong, that the glutamic acid also did bind to, just sort of activate. That's why it's a flavor enhancer, right? Well, actually, I take that back. It tastes umami, right? So it must bind selectively to umami receptors.
Yep.
So it behaves differently than glutamate does in the CNS, I guess.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, which is nice.
Well, right. But in other words, you don't have... So I guess we should say, right, for the non-initiated, that glutamate is the major excitatory neurotransmitter in your whole nervous system, right? So when your neurons fire, when one neuron synapses onto another neuron and makes it fire, it's usually because of glutamate carrying that signal, right?
Yep.
So, but I guess it is true that your taste bud sensory neurons are not, well, I don't know if any of them are, have traditional glutamate receptors in them, but I guess probably not, right?
I'm pretty sure they don't, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know.
There are specialized receptors definitely for, sweet, sour. This is a thing that we should both know, actually.
Well, I guess my question is really, yeah, obviously they're specialized for, well, you've got your basic 5 tastes, right? Sweet, sour, salty, bitter. Sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and, yeah, umami. But I guess my question is, what is the kind of shape? Or, if you take the lock and key analogy.
Oh, no. Sorry, I take that back. The umami receptor basically is an L-glutamate thing. It's got 2 subunits.
So it's basically a modified version of a regular central nervous system neuron, like a glutamatergic neuron.
I would guess that's where it came from, but yeah, that seems plausible. That it's like sort of mutated and now hangs out there.
Yeah. Well, and I was kind of wondering, similarly with the other sense neurons in the tongue, like, obviously most receptors are kind of dirty, right? In terms of they'll bind with, more than one thing, right? They're not completely monogamous.
Oh yeah, I mean that's how, drugs work.
Right, exactly. Yeah, not every drug is just an exact copy of something that's found in your nervous system, but it's close enough to fit for its lock to fit that key, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's totally fair.
So I was just wondering sort of how much glutamate would fit the other sensory neurons. But, you would think, obviously, the salty neurons, would just be sodium ion channels, which we also have plenty of in our nervous system.
It's funny you say that because this is from Wikipedia, but it says evidence for the salt receptor channels, however, is shaky at best and is often unconvincing in mammalian studies. For example, the proposed ENAC receptor for sodium can only be shown to contribute to sodium taste in Drosophila, which is helpful.
So
we have no idea how the tongue works.
What you're saying is we understand so much about how the CNS works and everything else, and we know that we like salty foods and that it's a basic taste, and we still don't know how?
Yeah, except for the part where we understand the brain.
Well, yes, but we understand
That's just a lie we tell undergrads.
Shh.
And funding agencies.
Well, that's one of those things that kind of comes around and back again, right? Like, whether or not you think you understand things.
The more I know, the less I know.
Yes.
I should put that in a fortune cookie, which I should sell which I should douse in MSG.
I feel like there is some common, yes, there is some common, or not common, but there is some saying about like, the more you know you don't know, or something like that, right? Because it's not, well, obviously it's not that you actually know any less, you just know how much there is out there and how you have a better idea of what percentage of things you actually know.
Oh yeah, nothing at all.
Well, yeah. All right, well anyway, so enough about MSG.
It's funny though, now that we got on this, because apparently MSG was first isolated from seaweed.
Yeah, that's true.
And I imagine that if you called it like seaweed extract, people would be lining up to buy it by the bottle.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's that Japanese. I don't know exactly what type of seaweed it is, but I have eaten it. They actually can get that quite easily here in Malaysia, right? You get the kind of compressed. Which one is it?
Kombu.
It's not that one. At least that's not what it goes by here. But yeah,
it's kelp.
I guess it's kelp. Yeah.
It looks like a piece of paper that's been lit on fire.
Yeah, it's like a green, flat piece of kind of crispy, thin paper, like a tissue paper consistency, but stiff.
Yeah. It's the broth from. I think it also goes into miso soup for some reason.
Yeah, I think the Japanese do. I mean, and Asians in general, right? I mean, that's why it's common at Chinese restaurants, right? Like they've been putting that stuff into food for years.
Yeah,
and they live forever, in Asia, so. Clearly, it's not killing people.
Did you know they have half of the people over 100 years old? I just learned that.
In Japan or in Asia?
Japan.
Oh, okay. That's kind of nuts.
That is kind of crazy. And I think it's like 50,000 people. That can't be right.
50,000 people over 100?
Yeah.
I guess it could be. You can look it up.
Did you see that the oldest man in the world died? Meaning we have moved up one in the ranking.
Awesome. I don't know that I really want that title, actually, but...
I don't know. He was 116, and he looked, I mean, this would be insulting otherwise, but like a day over 80.
Well, I think that's one of those things that you can only look so old, right, before...
No, but he didn't look decrepit. He just looked like an old man.
Yeah.
The current oldest person looks kind of decrepit. Sorry if you're listening to this. I find that unlikely, but...
Yes.
Oh.
What?
So that was totally untrue. It says the U.S. currently has the greatest no number of centenarians of any nation, with 53,364. Japan has the second largest number of centenarians, with an estimated 51,376. But there are way fewer people in Japan. So
Right. Well, that's interesting. I mean, the fact that it's the U.S. is not that surprising, because...
Japan has about twice as many per capita. It has the most per capita.
It's number one per capita, you said? Well, I guess it'd have to be, yeah.
France is number 2. Canada, woohoo, number 3.
Nice.
UK, number 4.
Really?
Sweden, number 5. Would be higher, but they've all been killed by IKEA furniture.
Yes. A lot of Allen wrench accidents.
Speaking of ironically dangerous places, Australia. But yeah, so the US is actually not, like, terribly far down this list.
Yeah.
Weirdly, Ireland is.
It's a very low number of... What is it, centenarians? Yeah.
Yep. They have 87.
Only 87 in all of Ireland? Huh.
Well, estimated.
Well, yes.
It's a very precise estimate.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Although you'd think at that point you could just count,
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, so back to neurotransmitters. Are you done ranting?
I mean, I can go back up the tree. That seems to be a common strategy. Go ahead.
Okay, so I haven't raved to you about this yet because I've been saving it for this. So I saw David Julius give a talk. I've raved to everyone else about this on Facebook.
Oh, I know that you saw. Yeah, I saw that you posted something. But go ahead.
Oh, it was the coolest talk I've seen in a while. So he studies trip channels. Yeah, it's TRP. So actually the name is stupid. Don't worry about the name. But in most animals, they sense two things. They sense temperature, and they also sense certain chemicals. So the trip channels are responsible for like the sensation of something being too hot or too cold, sort of like uncomfortably so.
Well, I was just explaining this to somebody recently that this is why, as you and I both know very well, this is why spicy things taste hot. You know, why we say hot, and why menthol or minty things taste cool is because they literally activate the same cells that make things on your tongue feel temperature hot or temperature cold.
Exactly. So these chemicals sort of hijack the trip channels and cause them to open. So he studies that, and so he has two sort of cool model systems. One is the pit viper, and so the pit viper has a pit in its face.
Please tell me he's feeding these poisonous snakes, really spicy Mexican food, and then evaluating how that affects them.
No, but it's actually even cooler than that. So this pit has it looks like a retina. He said they haven't studied this a ton yet, but
so when you said they have a pit, you mean what exactly?
I mean a pit, like a hole.
Like where in their body?
On their face. They have two on their face actually. It's like sort of near the eyes. We can put up a picture.
Okay, so these are different from like nostrils or something because they are just
no. So it's a pit. It's a little hole, and inside the hole there's nothing except for this super thin layer of cells that express these sort of heat-sensitive trip channels.
Right.
And the pit is shaped, it sort of looks like a retina, so it looks like a pinhole camera, so it sort of gets light or heat that's only sort of focused into one plane. Yeah. And so they can use these, so they sense heat with these things, and then it projects into their visual system. So
weird.
The snake has like a heat overlay of stuff going on around it. And this is useful for the snake, right? Because it pounces on, like
hot things.
Yeah, like mice and stuff that are warm-blooded.
That's insane. So it has basically like Terminator vision.
Yes, we think. Like it hasn't been studied extensively because would you like to be the one training the like venomous rattlesnake?
I'll pass. I think
the whole talk was me thinking like I really, really want to work on this. There's no way in hell I'm working on this.
Yeah,
but I wonder if I could put some electrodes in there. I wonder if someone else could put some electrodes in there for me.
Yeah. Well, in theory, if you just dress yourself in like aluminum foil, it should be all right? Like just reflect all the heat away from you and you'll be completely invisible to them.
Well, they have eyes too.
Oh. Well, that could be problematic.
So his other model animal was even cooler. Yeah. And that is the vampire bat.
Ah, yes.
So the vampire bat, as you might guess from the name, drinks blood.
Yes. Wears tuxedos, of course.
It does. Well, it's a bat. It's already sort of formally dressed. It's in black.
True.
And so it has these like weird rings on its nose.
Okay.
And these rings are loaded up with lots of trip channels too.
You mean rings like inside the nostrils?
No, its nose basically is a series of concentric rings.
Okay. I seem to remember bats having like kind of little pig snouts, sort of, right?
Well, this is a weird adaptation for the vampire bat.
Oh, okay. So it's specifically vampire bats.
Yeah. And so it sort of acts like the one in the snake.
Oh, that does have a weird nose. Okay.
Yeah, they're creepy as hell. He showed a video of them, like a night vision video of them, and they can also walk, unlike most birds.
Well, you mean like unlike most bats?
Well, yeah. Even most birds, like sort of, don't walk very well.
They kind of hop, yeah.
Yeah, so this thing uses the end of its wings too to walk. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
They only live in South America, so I feel okay.
I see one. There's one on Wikimedia Commons that I'll link to of it looks like a vampire bat in walking position, and it kind of looks like a bat spider actually, and that in the way its legs kind of align when it's walking, which if you weren't terrified enough by vampire bats, just picture one in a spider pose, and that'll probably do it for you.
Yeah, that's a really good description. So they like run up to the pig. And then they use this weird nose structure to to find the spots where the pig's blood vessels are closest to the surface.
Yep.
And then they pounce with their fangs. They inject something called draculin, which keeps the blood from coagulating.
Awesome.
And then they go to town on the pig. I mean, fortunately, they're only like 40 grams, so they can't take that much blood away.
Right. I mean, so they're really more of a pest to the pig than an actual threat, I suppose, unless they carry a disease of some sort.
Yeah, I would still say we should kill it with fire, except, you can see where the fire is coming from.
Well, yes. You need to kill it with a stake, I believe.
But, there's one really... So then he talked a little bit about the molecular biology, and there's this really cool thing where you'd think, so if it has all these trip channels, right, which normally indicate pain, then
right.
the animal should be in, like, excruciating pain all the time.
Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Which would suck if you were a bat or a snake.
Well, in a way, but that's trip channels in the skin, right? Which...
No, you have them in your viscera and stuff, too.
But that is still for... Is that still for sensing temperature-based pain? It wouldn't be, I guess,
yeah.
in the... Well, but when your viscera... I guess this is a loaded question. I was going to ask when do your viscera get all hot, but I don't know if I want to hear the answer to that.
Well, but I think if they ever do, it's something you want to get away from.
Yeah, it's just that most of the time the heat comes from the outside, so you'd think you'd only want it or need it in your skin, right? But I don't know.
Yeah, yes, I guess that would make sense. But so they have these two variants of the trip channels. So there's sort of like a low temperature threshold one and a high temperature threshold one.
Right.
And so they're like basically the same protein, except you know how there's like different splice variants where you basically chop off different bits of the protein.
Right.
Yeah. So the bat and snake have their sort of low temperature variant only expressed in the part of in their sort of sensory apparatus.
Right.
And then they have the high temperature one expressed everywhere else.
Okay. Interesting.
So then you got some like other bats and other snakes that don't have heat sensitivity, and those guys only have the high temperature one, and it's sort of expressed everywhere.
Yeah.
It was just really cool. Like the whole story hung together fantastically well, and there were these freaky ass animals.
Always a plus.
And there were good snacks afterwards.
Were you forced to find them like blindfolded, by how warm they were?
I thought they should have had like blood sausage and garlic, but no one asked me.
All right.
But yeah, David Julius, don't mess with his lab, or they will sick things on you.
Or they will just send the vampire bats and the pit vipers after you.
I would imagine he has like no animal rights problems. It's like, oh, we should save oh god.
Yeah, exactly. Now you guys be nice to the pit. Who am I kidding?
So, anyways, that was really cool. He has a bunch of papers. Like basically, his lab finds creepy animals and then studies trip channels in them.
Okay, cool. I feel like but it does sound like they're just kind of like fishing around to be like, what should we study next? I know, the angry rhinoceros.
Well, I mean, they're, sort of like, they're very relevant for pain and stuff. So a fair bit of his talk was sort of drug discovery things like, well, if we could turn the low sensitive trip channel into the high sensitive, or the high sensitive thing into the low sensitive thing. Oh, there's all these other things that sort of facilitate them, which sort of moves your temperature sensitivity down in response to injury.
Yeah.
But that was not as creepy as the vampire bats.
Right. Well, and I guess it also stands to reason that, like, kind of your freakier, more bizarro animals are going to be the ones that have the adaptations that are interesting, right? Because, mammals are kind of boring in that way, in that we do. I mean, there are plenty of variations.
The bats are mammals.
Well, that's true. Okay, sorry. I was thinking more like dog, cat, squirrel type mammals. But yeah, I mean, everyday animals. I guess we don't have a ton of adaptations that are that different from each other, at least in that regard. Although maybe that's
we've colored. Well, so I think
maybe I'm just used to people using rats and mice and dogs and cats so much that they don't seem that interesting anymore.
Well, I guess there are two schools of thought, right? One is that we have the mouse, and we know every friggin' thing we could know about the mouse. We have sequenced it. We have knocked out like all the genes that we can knock out. Well, not all of them, but
yeah.
And so, it's nice. You can do whatever you want to a mouse. It's all been super studied. And there's sort of the ethology thing where we're going to find an animal that's really good at something, and then we'll study that in the animal. So we're going to study sound location in owls and bats and dolphins, and we'll study, temperature sensation in pit vipers. And I don't know. I think that's sort of gone out of style, I think. Like, songbirds had a nice sort of bubble when we were in grad school, and now it's gone, which makes me sad.
Well, they may come back.
If I ever get tenure, my lab's going to be full of creepy animals.
It'll just be the Dr. Dolittle of neuroscience.
Except for the snakes. I'll have a postdoc feed the snakes.
Well, as we saw in McSweeney's, you have to be pretty good at the snake fight portion of your thesis defense to even finish. So should link up that article. It's a pretty good one. Okay, well, we should get to our actual content because
that was content. That was on the list.
Oh yeah, that's true. That one was on the list. But we are 50 minutes in, and we should probably not have another 2-hour episode.
No, if for no other reason than I need to do laundry.
Well, yeah, and I need to go to bed at some point, and also do some things before bed. But so just to finish up on the taste rant, you and I actually did another one of these that has been semi-officially disproven, is the the hipster obsession with sugarcane Coke as opposed to corn syrup Coke, right?
I did not. Well, we have done this several times.
Well, right, and you've probably heard people say that's the good stuff, is the real sugarcane, and now they're even marketing it, right? Like Pepsi Throwback and all those throwback ones, right? Made with real cane sugar and not that nasty old corn syrup, right?
Yeah, I saw a Mountain Dew throwback the other day too.
Oh yeah, well that
gas station in Vermont. Yeah, I don't know what it's throwing back to.
Well, Mountain Dew throwback. If you look on the side of the can, it shows this kind of bumpkin fellow, I believe, in the original can. So it has vaguely antebellum racist connotations to it. Actually, I think.
Wait, is that true everywhere? Because I was in deepest, darkest nowhere.
And it had the redneck guy on the Mountain Dew bottle.
Yeah, and I couldn't decide if that was targeted selling to people in sort of north central Vermont where there's no gas stations for miles.
I think no. I think Mountain Dew did originally come from the South and had this kind of, it has this kind of Mountain Dew, this Southern association anyway. Apparently,
really? I didn't know that.
Well, apparently it was first marketed in Marion, Virginia, Knoxville, Tennessee, and Johnson City, Tennessee, with the slogan, "Yahoo Mountain Dew, it'll tickle your innards."
That is the least appealing slogan I can imagine.
Yeah, this is kind of all fitting together quite nicely with the temperature-sensitive viscera and so forth. You could actually sense it tickling your innards, apparently. But yeah, I think it had the word Mountain Dew. Yeah, it was originally Southern and/or Scots-Irish slang for moonshine, according to Wikipedia. So, yeah, and it originally had the cartoon character Willie the Hillbilly as its little mascot guy.
Is he one of your kin?
He probably is. I mean, I'm from not too far away from there. I don't have any Willie relatives, but I certainly have plenty of hillbilly relatives.
Wow. I should just add that it's spelled "it'll tickle your Yore."
Yep.
Innards.
Yep.
And he's shooting a gun at someone. Is that a chicken shooting a gun?
No, I think it's a human shooting a gun. He's probably shooting...
What's on the human's head?
I don't know. This is...
It looks kind of like Foghorn Leghorn.
Like Foghorn Leghorn, and it looks like he's shooting another guy going to the outhouse, actually, in this particular
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, too.
Yeah. It's like, don't you dare go to the bathroom.
Let it tickle your innards, boy.
I will literally tickle your innards.
With lead.
With my gun, yes. Weird. But anyway, people always say there's this crusade against corn sugar, and I do agree it's bad to just put sugar willy-nilly the hillbilly all over all products. But people keep saying Mexican Coke is cane sugar Coke, and I think Malaysian Coke is too.
I think it's everywhere outside the U.S. actually.
I think most places,
because the U.S. subsidizes the heck out of corn.
Yeah, and conversely, places like Mexico and Malaysia and so forth, grow plenty of their own sugar in the form of sugarcane. But yeah, I mean, we had it's also the Coke was even before the throwback thing was popular, around which is it Passover time, yeah. Which in Connecticut there's a fair number of people that might be celebrating Passover. So they would have the special Passover Coke because I guess you're not supposed to have any grain.
You can't have any like fermented grain.
Yeah. Which includes, I guess, corn syrup by whoever interprets these things.
Well, I think the shtick is that, when they were fleeing Egypt, they didn't have time to make bread. They didn't have time for the bread to rise. So you don't want any grains that have been wet, basically, because it could be rising.
Oh, is that because I wasn't sure. I knew you couldn't use actual yeast to raise your bread, but I wasn't sure what the.
Well, I think it depends on your degree of sort of orthodoxy or hardcoreness.
Right.
I think if you're like super, super orthodox, you don't want any grain that's been wet for more than like a few minutes because it could be rising.
Okay.
I think that's the logic behind using sugar instead of corn.
I guess that makes sense, right? Because the sugar in sugarcane is basically scraped or whatever directly from sugarcane.
Well, it's not a grain.
Well, it's no grain. Yeah, I feel like there's a grain and cane falls mainly on the something.
I don't know enough. I don't know any Yiddish words that rhyme with.
Well, I was trying to think of a great Seder joke, but oh well. Anyway, but yeah, so you can get the Passover special Coke, right? It's made with sugarcane, and so we did this, right? You and me and our pals, Chris and Nicole, and was that all of us? Maybe a couple of other people?
No, I think there were a fair number of people.
Yeah, and we all did a semi-scientific, double-blind taste test, and the grand conclusion was that nobody could tell the difference, right?
Yep.
And if anything, I think people slightly preferred the corn syrup Coke, if I recall correctly.
I can't remember.
I mean, it wasn't. We did run some rough statistics. I think each of us tasted like 3 times or something like that. In random order, 3 of each thing in random order. And if I recall correctly, there was a slight preference, and no one was particularly consistent. There was a slight preference for the corn syrup, and nobody was consistently above chance, though, individually. And Serious Eats also did. You know the blog Serious Eats, I assume, right?
I love Serious Eats. It is the best blog almost ever.
Yeah. So Serious Eats did basically the same thing we did, and they also concluded that nobody could tell the difference between cane sugar and corn syrup Coke. So another hipster myth dispelled.
We got scooped by. Oh, yeah, we did get scooped. They didn't do it till 2011.
They didn't do it till 2011?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we didn't exactly rush to publish that one, but
story of my life.
Yeah. Well, somehow I think that would not have been widely cited. Although, speaking of citations,
I don't know. I mean, higher impact factor than.
Well, but what I was going to say is, I realize, sadly, this podcast now officially, if our download statistics are right, has far more listeners than probably any paper I've ever written.
That's depressing. Let's never speak of that again.
Or, you know what I mean, than any paper I have ever been involved with has had readers.
Oh, no,
right?
I completely know what you mean.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say, right, because you don't get download statistics for your papers, but certainly we have far more listeners than any paper of mine has ever been cited.
Although, the other thing we know about Coke from our grad school experiences is that they tweak the formula for different places.
Yeah.
Right? Remember we went to the Coke Museum and they had that vile Italian vermouth soda?
Yeah, it was called, I was just thinking about that the other day, and now the name is escaping me.
I think it was Vomito di Satan.
It did start with a V. It was, shoot.
Coke vermouth soda.
I want to say Verona, but that's not right. No, Beverly. Beverly was one of the
Beverly.
First ones. Yeah.
Oh, that was vile.
Yeah, that was disgusting. You know what's funny is I have talked to many people, or heard even on other podcasts and things, people talk about going to the Coke Museum, and to a person, everyone always goes, oh yeah, there's the mango thing, that was pretty good. The Coke in other parts of the world tasted about the same, but a little bit different. But then that Beverly stuff was disgusting.
All right, so this is an unsourced claim on the internet, so take this for whatever it's worth. But I quote: "One employee of the World of Coca-Cola in Atlanta claimed that on average, 2,000 people go through the tasting area each day. And on average, 5 people enjoy the taste of Beverly."
That sounds about right to me.
Then there's a photo of it, so you know what to avoid.
I mean, it's not like. Have you ever tasted this thing that's very popular in Malaysia? This fruit durian. I know you've heard of it.
I have, and actually, I just saw it for sale here. It's vile.
Yeah. Oh, actually, you probably ate some of the candy that I brought back with me during that last visit.
I did. I ate one of those, and Ken doesn't like it. Mandy really likes it, and his daughter really likes it. So they generously allowed me to taste a very small amount of it, diluted in a milkshake, right? So you'd think, how vile could a milkshake be?
Yeah.
Vile.
Very, very vile.
How would you describe the experience?
Well, I mean, so I've had durian, I think, three times if you count the candy. I mean, people describe it in various ways. Some people say it, it's like rotting flesh. Some people say,
diaper full of Indian food.
Yes, basically. A turd covered in burnt hair and so forth. But, I don't think I can't compare the taste to any one particular thing. I just think it tastes distinctly unlike anything that should be food.
Yeah, they have them for sale fresh here in the Chinese stores.
Okay. Well, you can certainly buy them here, like just on the side of the road, out of the trunk of some guy's car, etc., and also in supermarkets.
Is it durians that are not allowed to be taken on the subway or the train?
Well, I don't know about that per se, but definitely you see signs in public places oftentimes saying don't eat durian here. Like if you go to a lot of hotels, eating durian is banned in the hotel for obvious reasons. Because the smell does really, well, maybe not so obvious. The smell really carries quite far. And it's so people say that, oh, well, the smell is really the bad part. The taste is all right. The taste is sort of a generic. If you hold your nose, the taste is sort of this generic. It's kind of really creamy in texture for a fruit. It's more like a thick kind of custard texture.
The texture was not objectionable. The rest of it was objectionable.
Yeah, the texture is kind of, well, you know what, it's kind of like softened cream cheese. Like if you get kind of the pre-whipped cream cheese, or somewhere between, maybe like cheesecake texture, something like that.
Oh, you're not kidding. Here's a sign. Oh, this is from Singapore. And it says no smoking, and there's a picture of a cigarette, crossed out. No eating or drinking, food crossed out. No durians.
Yeah. It's gross, but...
Anthony Burgess writes that eating durian is like eating a sweet raspberry blancmange in the lavatory.
Yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of colorful descriptions, but I think none of them really do it justice. It is really... I mean, it's not so vile that I felt ill eating it, but I might feel ill if I ate more than like a small taste of it.
What if it were dyed blue?
If it were dyed blue, it'd probably taste like sweet cotton candy.
Do you know they have maple cotton candy here?
No, no, but I'm not surprised, I guess.
No, neither have I. I haven't tried it yet, but I want to.
Well, the basic cotton candy flavor is just sugar, right? Yeah. Although I don't know about you, but I don't typically like maple flavoring anything but actual maple syrup. Like maple ice cream and stuff I find a bit gross.
You might not like Canada very much then.
They just have maple everything?
I've been keeping a list for Zoe because Zoe Klein is apparently obsessed with maple things.
Okay.
I can't find it now. But yeah, so maple coffee, maple tea, maple ice cream, maple jam, maple mayonnaise, maple taffy.
I mean, maple taffy, that makes sense. Why maple mayonnaise? What do you put mayonnaise on that also needs to taste like maple?
I didn't get it. This was at the hospital cafeteria, actually. I didn't get it because I thought it was gross. But people have pointed out to me that, maple glazed ham is pretty good.
That's good. Well, what is really good is like when you have pancakes and you dip your sausage or bacon or whatever in a little bit of maple syrup. I agree, that's good.
Oh, yeah, definitely that. Actually, one of the best things I've eaten since I've been here was a pickerel poached in maple sap, which is sort of like the dilute liquid that the maple syrup comes from.
Yeah.
It was at a ridiculously fancy restaurant, though, so I don't know if it was just going to be good, like, regardless, or the sap added a kick to it.
Speaking of...
Oh, this is awesome. Sorry, can I go back to the durian?
Sure, go ahead.
So the durian's Latin name is Vivivera Civet.
Yep.
Zibetha. And it says, there's a disagreement whether this name, bestowed by Linnaeus, refers to the civet cat, which is a wild cat that lives in Asia.
I was just trying to think of the name of that the other day. You know the cool thing about the civet cat, right?
They eat the beans, and then people make fancy coffee out of the beans the cat has shit out.
Yep. The cat poop coffee.
So this goes nicely with that, actually.
Oh, wait, sorry, you're silencing it a little bit. Say again?
Oh, so this goes nicely with that, actually. Okay, so the Latin name for durians refers to the civet cat.
Right.
However, there's apparently a fairly vehement disagreement over whether this is because the cats are fond of durians, and you can use the fruit as bait to catch them.
Okay.
Or because the durians smell like the mangy wild cats.
Interesting. Well, I have seen both.
Have Have you seen a civet?
Yeah, I have. They have them at the zoo here. They actually seem pretty smart and cool.
I mean, they drink coffee, sort of.
Well, they eat coffee beans, but I'm not sure to what extent that's voluntary versus... Yeah.
No, they eat them in the wild.
Oh, do they eat them in the wild and poop them out?
Yeah.
But I guess the pooping sort of directly correlates to the eating.
Oh, I had never noticed. They do have a sort of Malaysian-looking name.
The civet? What do you mean?
Kopi Luwak?
Oh, I see what you mean. The name of the coffee.
Oh. Is it coffee? Oh, Kopi is coffee?
Kopi is coffee. I'm not sure what Luwak means. I can look that up quickly.
I would guess it means civet.
Maybe. Don't take that as super obvious. Malay has a lot of weird names for things.
I didn't realize they fed them in captivity. That's kind of sad.
Well, I figured.
Yeah, Luwak is the Indonesian name for the Asian palm civet.
Okay. All right, cool. I couldn't find it in my dictionary, but that might be an Indonesian term, not a Malaysian term. Yeah, I've never had it, actually. It's not particularly common here. What is common, when you get coffee here, it's always this disgusting instant coffee that's a mixture. They call it 3-in-1. It's a mixture of coffee, dry, powdered milk or whatever, creamer, and sugar already blended together, and you just add water. But it's super gross because everyone likes their coffee incredibly milky and incredibly sweet here. So
is it hot or cold?
Well, I mean, when you go to the coffee aisle in the supermarket, it's powdered instant coffee, that you just buy in a bag and make however you like. But you can get it. You can get coffee hot or cold here.
But what's the default?
I guess hot.
Oh, okay. Because it's hot in Malaysia.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's certainly not unusual, to be able to order most drinks either hot or cold. Even actually a lot of things that you wouldn't think you would want hot. But often it seems like when I go to a place and they've got a menu, they've just got an overall beverages can be hot or cold, even things like, I don't know if it's really true that you would ever order like fruit juice hot, but it's in the same list it's in the same list as like coffee and tea and everything else though. So.
But if you go to the South and you ask for tea, it's going to be sweet tea.
Yeah. Whereas
up here, it is unknown to Canadian kind.
That's true. But I think what's gross to me is that it's like, I certainly agree. Like if you also go to Dunkin' Donuts, you get pretty sweet milky tea if you ask for like the regular style, coffee, if you ask for regular coffee. But I don't know, it's different here, especially I think because it's all instantified. Like it's hard to find coffee grounds here.
Weird.
And you get coffee beans, but they're...
but you have to grind them yourself? Well,
A, you have to grind them yourself, and B, it's, expensive, right? Because usually it's the nice fancy coffee that you buy the beans directly. So yeah, I actually paid through the nose for just a big jug of Maxwell House or something recently because I couldn't find anything cheaper, and that was still 5 times as expensive as Maxwell House is in the States. Because it's imported, you see.
Ah, yes. It is funny when things get labeled imported even though they're not very good.
Yeah.
Like there's a wide variety of imported beers here that, people would laugh if you tried to sell them at imported prices at home.
Right, yeah. I mean, actually, you can't get Budweiser here, but, in Belgium, Budweiser would be imported. Although, actually, it's funny to me that American beers are not more popular. I don't think you can get any American beers here, but all of the beers here are kind of light lagers. So you would think that, or lagers or pilsners, I guess, but you would think that things like Budweiser and such would be very popular when...
That's weird. Do you think maybe they're owned by Budweiser?
Well, no, I think it's more that there's weird import laws and stuff, and a few companies kind of have a monopoly, and it's just whatever they import. But you actually can get Guinness here. That's one brand you can get that is not a light lager. But other than that, you can get I think a Singaporean beer named Tiger. You get Carlsberg.
Well, Carlsberg is the biggest beer company ever.
Yeah. And you can get Heineken, but it's all Carlsberg, Heineken, etc. kind of beers, which is not that exciting. But anyway, that's kind of off topic, I guess.
So I've been still reading about durian while we were reconnecting. Apparently there's a dish made with fermented durian.
What's that one?
Tempoyak.
Okay, I haven't had that.
It is usually made from lower quality durian that is unsuitable for direct consumption.
Ugh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite gross.
Sometimes it's burned and the ash is added to cakes. This is just not meant to be eaten.
No.
Oh, and the seeds are super toxic.
Oh, awesome. Well, also, if you look at the outside of durian fruit, it is
not friendly looking.
It's like the porcupine of fruits, right? Like, except the inside of a porcupine probably tastes much better.
Even raw?
Yeah, I would probably rather eat like raw porcupine entrails, than more durian.
I'm almost certain that can be arranged when you're back home.
I mean, I'm not saying I'd like to, but I'm just saying, given the choice. But yeah, this is a fruit that is saying, it's basically waving giant flags saying, do not eat me, whatever you do. And human beings are like, nope, I'm going to try that. I'm going to make it happen.
I highly recommend reading the Wikipedia article if you would like some flavorful descriptions.
Yeah, we can link to that later. I've certainly heard many varieties. But, I mean, this kind of links back, actually. Once again, we've kind of successfully kind of taken the roundabout way back to our first topic, which is, this is why I always sort of claim that I'm unconvinced by like fancy food a lot of the time, or the value of fancy food, because the real answer is human beings can convince themselves to eat just about anything with enough effort, right? And all these studies show over and over again that like a lot of psychological factors are largely what influence your perception of taste, right? So both like the fact that people. Because anyone who visits one of these durian-eating countries and tastes durian, nobody ever likes it, right? But the natives love it.
Yeah, okay, so, that's fair enough.
Well, but, so basically, clearly it's not. So, this goes for kind of any delicacy, right? Whether it's durian or lutefisk or something like that, right? Like, they all taste disgusting to people that aren't familiar with them. So, the question is, do they really taste good? Like, if you have to acquire a taste for something, in what way can that be called good? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Although, I don't know. I mean, when we were little, beer was disgusting and gross, and so was coffee and tea.
Well, so that's that's a good follow-up. And, I guess the question is, can you really say, now having drunk beer, I've seen you drink a beer or two in your time, what a good beer, quote-unquote good beer, is supposed to taste like, right?
Yeah.
Versus a bad beer. But is that really because there's anything better about it? Or because you have been trained to an arbitrary standard of what is good or bad, and that now you just have been trained to associate, the one that you can tag as good with goodness? You know what I mean?
Maybe a little bit of both, I guess. I mean, people do have different tastes in, things like beer.
That is true. And I would certainly believe in that, but I just wonder, like, this is why I'm very doubtful. I'm like, well, if people can learn that they learn to like durian, I don't think anyone else on the planet, aside from durian-eating countries, would say, like, oh, yes, that's really good food. That's a great delicacy. I would pay a lot of money for that.
And they are actually quite expensive. The ones on the street were like $5 or $10.
Yeah. I mean, it's relatively cheap here.
Well, it's because it grows there.
Well, also, you don't really need a whole one, usually, right? I mean, they're pretty big.
Yeah, that's true.
But, yeah, I don't know. I just wonder if it's the fact that acquiring a taste for something, or like training yourself to recognize the taste, is difficult, if that's what people are really prizing or valuing. When you talk about, someone being a connoisseur of wine or coffee or anything like that, like it's very easy to appreciate a cheeseburger, because pretty much anyone who eats meat thinks a cheeseburger is pretty delicious the first time, right?
Yeah.
And is it just because it's not difficult that is, considered low food?
No, I don't know. I mean, you can drop a ton of money on a cheeseburger if you're going to the right place.
Well, true, but by the same principle, like, is that cheeseburger really better, or have you just been trained to recognize like the variations in cheeseburgers that people associate with higher cost?
Maybe a bit of both.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to keep coming back to the durian, but this is just so I've scrolled down to the cultural influences part to see if they had anything relevant.
Yep.
And the Javanese believe that durian have aphrodisiac qualities and impose a set of rules on what may or may not be consumed with it. A saying in Indonesian, blah, 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 means the durian falls and the sarong comes up, which refers to this belief.
All I can say Because I have never directly observed this. Although
maybe you should eat more durian.
I was going to say maybe I should give it a try. I was going to make a very bad pun.
Come on, if this is not the place, what is?
It's not even fully formed. Just something about how the taste of durian is so wrong. It's something. But yeah.
So right, but so wrong.
Much like the sarong, I couldn't really get that joke off.
The article then abruptly segues into recommendations that you wear a hard hat while collecting the fruit because of its pointy spines and heavy weight.
Exactly. I mean, it is the fruit that is actively trying to kill you. So before we go off the durian entirely, did you talk to Mike Henderson when he visited me here and his experiences?
A little bit.
So the funny thing that happened to him was he had been telling me. He came to Singapore, and I met up with him in Singapore, and then he came back to Malaysia with me and spent a couple of days with me in Malaysia. And while he was in Singapore, he was telling me he wandered into a pretty heavily Chinese part of town, and all of Singapore is pretty heavily Chinese, but a more Chinese where they didn't speak a lot of English, and saw people selling food on the street, and was just kind of like, all right, I'll just eat some of this stuff. I'm sure it's pretty good, And so he goes up to this old man on the street selling ice cream in bread, which is a way that it is sold here. And I've had it, and it's not very good, actually. I prefer
Wait, ice cream on bread?
Yeah, it's just, I had this in Indonesia just a few days ago.
Did someone misunderstand the ice cream sandwich?
I don't think so, although that's basically what it is. I had chocolate ice cream in basically a hamburger bun, and you just kind of just wedge the ice cream in the hamburger bun and eat it like that.
That just seems like it would not be very well engineered.
Yeah, it was more difficult to eat than an ice cream cone, but it also was. I found the taste didn't really accentuate each other the way that a nice cone does. But it's something people do. But anyway, so he was like, all right, well, I like ice cream, and the old man didn't really speak any English to tell him what kind of ice cream it was. But how bad could ice cream be? So he buys this for a couple of bucks and eats it, and it's disgusting. And so he was telling me about this, and I was like, all right, well, I don't know what that was, but fine. So flash forward to a few days later, he's with me in Malaysia, and we've made a couple of plans that have not gone off right. We were going to go up in one of the buildings, and tickets were all sold out and so forth. And I was like, all right, well, I feel bad for you for not having gotten these couple of experiences, so I'm going to treat you to a real Malaysian experience and buy you some durian. So I went to the local durian stand, which I think is hilariously to me entitled Durian Durian. I have no idea if they know of the band Duran Duran and why this is so funny to me.
Wait, isn't that just plural though? Doesn't that just mean durians?
Well, yeah. So in Malay, there is no grammatical plural, but if you need to, so you just use the same word for singular and plural a lot of the time. But if you need to emphasize the plurality of something or just accentuate the meaning, you just say it twice. So it could mean
Durian City.
Really durian-y, yeah. Spatula City. Anyway, so we went to Durian Durian, even though we were not hungry like the wolf. And
that really needs to be on the menu.
Well, but I think they don't have any idea of this band and why this is funny to me. So anyway, we went to Durian Durian, and for, the equivalent of about $1, I bought him a little durian pastry thing, which is just kind of a little it's kind of like a little pancake or something, but has, just durian inside. The pancake part is quite tasty, but it's kind of a little crepe, basically. But he tasted me, he's like, oh God, I've had this before. This is what the stuff was in Singapore the other day. So basically I forced him to eat durian, discussed himself the second time in 3 days when he was already having kind of a crappy day.
So I'm looking at Duran Duran songs.
Yep.
You could do a great durian-themed restaurant here.
Oh, yeah?
All That She Wants.
Okay.
Burning the Ground. Do You Believe in Shame?
Nice.
Out of My Mind. Someone Else, Not Me.
Yeah, that's a good slogan for
Save a Prayer.
Nice.
Not Hungry Like the Wolf.
Yep.
And my personal favorite here, Is There Something I Should Know?
Yes. The durian tastes like garbage.
I think we should... You always want to open a business. I think this could be it.
Anyway.
Oh, you do have a sense of smell. Who doesn't have a sense of smell that we know?
I don't have a really great sense of smell, but I do have one. Do we know someone that lacks a sense of smell?
Yeah. I don't know who it is.
We'll
have to employ them in our Duran.
Yeah. What was? Oh, I just said this to Alyssa the other day. So I think we might have to cut this one out. But you know how Alyssa wanted to open up a fudge store called Round the Corner Fudge.
Yep.
I had a 3 years later. Oh, I wanted the slogan for the billboard slogan for Round the Corner Fudge to be "Go fudge yourself." Yeah, that would be a pretty good slogan for a fudge shop.
That would be a great slogan for a fudge shop.
Okay, so
we should talk about science at some point instead of just weird hippie fruits.
So to wrap up the food segment, so we'll link to some of the wine tasting stuff. I would just like to mention, while we're on the subjects of Malaysia and everything else, that Malaysian Coke is, I am told, and I haven't checked this out scientifically, but I am told that it is the sweetest Coke in the world with the highest sugar content, which I'm pretty proud of. It beats out, I think Mexican Coke is really sweet too, but I think Malaysian Coke is even sweeter.
That's actually, I wonder if sweet receptors vary from, there's lots of weird sort of...
Well, so I was just talking about this the other day. It seems to be the case that equatorial countries have a greater sweet tooth, especially for beverages. Like, drinks especially here are incredibly sweet almost all the time. Like, I think their basic formula for any food or any beverage is boil some water, add sugar until the water will hold no more sugar in it, and it's super saturated, and then drop in some food coloring and serve. Huh. But it seems to be the case in the Middle East and Latin America and so forth. Also, that they like.
It's definitely true in the U.S. too, right?
Yeah, people like sweeter stuff in the South than in the North.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but we don't know why that is, right? So, one theory is that tropical fruits, or fruits in general, grow more in those areas, so that maybe you get a taste for, sweet fruity things. Or possibly the other question was and we didn't feel this to be true, but is there something you tend to be dehydrated in these places more? So is there something about the sweet that is more thirst quenching, or people think it is anyway?
Huh, that's interesting. Because you use mannitol. So if you're sort of overhydrated,
right?
You get this. You normally get a IV of it, I guess. It's called mannitol.
Okay.
And it's a sugar alcohol, but it actually dehydrates you.
Well, that's what we were saying is, I didn't know that, but at least my impression, when I drink something too sugary, it actually makes my mouth feel very dry. It doesn't feel as thirst-quenching as something that's a little bit sweet.
No, that's exactly it, because the sugar messes with the osmolarity and pulls water out of the cells.
Okay. So kind of just like having something salty, similar kind of thing. You want to dilute the sugar more, basically, yep. Right? Yeah. So we thought that was not the case, although there is also the idea, right, that people often describe the taste of cold water as being sweet, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes someone really thirsty, they'll say something like sweet water, something like that. So there is a kind of association with cold beverages and sweetness. So maybe it enhances the cold feeling, psychologically speaking. We weren't sure.
There's also the horrible confound that, you're really not going to get sugarcane to grow in Quebec.
True. That's true. I'm just looking to see if there is any research on why hot countries prefer sweeter beverages, but that might be something to follow up on later.
I mean, I've heard that in terms of spicy food too, right?
What about it?
It's sort of supposed to desensitize you to heat.
Oh, interesting. I've never heard of it quite that way, but I guess that's...
Because think of where all your sort of spicy cuisines are from.
Yeah.
You have Mexico, you have sort of southern China, you have India. Right.
But then again, you'd have the same issue, right, is that hot peppers, I believe, tend to be indigenous to those areas, right?
You can grow them in Connecticut.
True. Well, I mean, you can grow a lot of things, a lot of places they didn't originally come from, but, I think they are more indigenous to those places, right? Funnily enough, actually, Malaysians, you would think would be very, into spicy food, and some of them are, but it's not quite the tolerance that I expected from Southeast Asia.
You think it's just the Chinese influence?
Well, some of the Chinese food is spicy, but, there's plenty of Indian food and so forth, and that can be also very spicy, but certainly nothing I've had here has compared to what I've, at least heard that real Indian food or real Pakistani food, or even like, some Mexican food is like. Although you can make it like arbitrarily spicy because they'll often have like spicy peppers or whatever just around for you to add to stuff. So maybe that's how they do it.
Were you with me and Julie when we went to Thai Terrace and asked them to make it native spicy?
Yes, I was with you at least one time there. That was very spicy. That was the second spiciest meal I think I've ever had.
Oh, that's true. I remember you taunting me.
How so?
Because mine was like a pile of hot peppers and a small bit of the other foods. And I tried to order a Thai iced tea, and the guy took his sweet time bringing it over.
So to speak, yeah. Yeah, I think I ordered mine to be not quite as spicy as yours, if I recall.
I think I get carried away with the Nick and Julie.
Yeah. Well, I had a similar. I think part of my version might be from the spiciest meal I ever had, which was when my Pakistani sweet mate Mansoor in college, we went to the local Indian Pakistani-ish restaurant. Well, you would know it from New Haven, Tandoor, and he talked to the people in Urdu and said, make it the way we like it, along with my mostly Caucasian other sweet mates. And I think I drank more water. I might have been in danger of dying from, water poisoning that night, just from how much water I drank trying to survive the food that we ate. But yeah, I know a lot of Malaysians that can't actually tolerate spice much at all. And then others who have as much tolerance as the Americans I've known. But it certainly is not the spicy food mecca I thought it might be.
That's too bad.
Well, it's all right. I've invested in some hot sauce and so forth, and so actually, yeah, I've had a real taste for spicy food recently. I've been saving up the Domino's here. The chili flakes that you can put on your pizza.
Oh yeah.
So they give you. I don't know if they do this with delivery in the States, but they always bring you like several little packets of those chili flakes when you get pizza delivery here. And I usually don't put them on my pizzas, but I do save them because I am sort of like someone's grandmother in that I can't like throw any of the stuff away when it's given to me. But I've recently taken to just carrying around like a little packet of spicy chili flakes in my shirt pocket and putting it on whatever I'm eating.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. Anyway, so just to tie off the McDonald's thing, you've seen, I assume, this comes up like every 2 years or so, like clockwork in the news, when people say like, "Oh my God, McDonald's food, it never decays." This came around again just recently, and it always annoys me.
Oh no, I have mercifully missed that.
Does it drive you as crazy as it drives me, or is that just me?
Well, it's like the Twinkie thing, right? It's under the right conditions, you can keep anything from decaying.
Well, exactly. I mean, people they really want McDonald's food and stuff to be full. Like, I'm not saying it's good for you, right? Because one thing it is full of is cholesterol, and salt and so forth. It's certainly not health food, but it's really no more full of preservatives than the food that you buy in the supermarket. If you look at the recipes for something like a Big Mac, it's basically bread like you would buy in the supermarket, and hamburger like you would buy in the supermarket, and salt and pepper, And the bread has some preservatives in it, but no more than the loaf of bread that you would buy, at Stop and Shop or whatever. And the thing that makes it not decay is basically that it's dry and salty.
Well, you put people in dry and salty conditions, they don't decay either. You get mummies instead.
Right, exactly. And, when people were coming across the ocean, to settle North America in ships, or just in general, what do you do if you want to preserve meat for months and months on end?
Jerky.
You put in a bunch of salt. Yeah. Well, you dry it out and or put in a bunch of salt. So it makes sense if you have a dry, salty hamburger and, you set it out in the open air so it dries out even more. It tends to dry out sufficiently that it can't go bad before it gets enough bacteria or mold or whatever in it, to really take root. And yeah, it's not rocket science. A lot of foods don't decay if you leave them out just because they are too dry or too salty or whatever for those things to thrive in them. I mean, anyway, a hamburger that you made yourself would be no different, really, if it were as it's also, I think, about the thinness of the meat, right? Like, that dries it out so much more quickly. So if you made a thin, salty hamburger at home, it'd be pretty much the same.
Someone actually has a website where they did that. I can't find it now, though.
It's something I just feel compelled to debunk whenever I see it because, I certainly am not, well, I am kind of a McDonald's apologist or a junk food apologist in general. But
the Screw Tape Happy Meals.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing...
I don't know any other apologetics, sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. Although you are a Canadian now, I do expect you to be apologizing much more often for everything.
Didn't I send you an email where I said s'il vous plaît by mistake?
Well, yes, but that's the kind of thing that like just randomly sneaks into the language anyway, I think.
No, but I mean, I wasn't doing it to be entertaining.
You were just doing it.
Soon I will make passive-aggressive signs to put up around my hospital also.
I didn't. So the Canadians are passive-aggressive people?
Well,
French Canadians
you know how they're like for example, if you were at like IOL or Yale, there'd be a sign that says like, you must wear your badge at all times. You must introduce yourself to patients. The one at the M&I says, I'm not making this up. It says, our policies are that you should wear your badge it says, we would like you to wear your badge at all times, and you should above the waist, and you should introduce yourself to patients when you meet them. These are our policies. It would be nice if you'd respect them.
That is very passive-aggressive. Yeah, Malaysian is a weird thing, actually. One funny thing about here is, and again, I can't really criticize people too much because my ancestors came here and basically
to Malaysia
took over the place. Well, not like my dad, but the white people from whom I'm descended mostly, were colonialized Malaysia for some time and imposed their English on them. So I can't fault many Malaysians for not having perfect English, right? Because it's not some of their native tongue, but it's not, the indigenous tongue of the region. But one sort of weird thing is that even though the English is not very good sometimes, it will be far more wordy and formal than it would be in the States or in the UK or something. So, like, we had an automatic door that wasn't working in one of the buildings recently, and they had a sign on the automatic door that said something like, we regret to inform you that this facility is not available at this time, or something like that, and, we're working very hard to, ensure its speedy return to service or something. And it was in not very good English, but it was in very formal, not very good English, where, in the States or Britain or whatever, you would just say out of order or out of service or something like that, right? But for some reason, people, like, when they do send out an email or something like that, it's extremely formal and full of these kind of stock phrases of formality, but often in a hilariously garbled way because they don't really understand the phrases they're using.
That's funny. We get that too, actually.
Oh, yeah?
So, like, my elevator is being replaced in my apartment building. And, yeah, the note in English was actually less comprehensible than the parallel French translation on the other side. And much wordier also? Yeah. Yeah. Weird how people will do that because, that is not my inclination, when I don't speak any foreign language fluently, but to the extent that I speak any foreign language, I'm always like, me like schnitzel. Give me one drink, please. Yeah, that was my German, was a lot of das und yeah. Zwei das?
Still now, it's often like, how much? This much. Thank you. I certainly am not saying the equivalent of like, it would greatly please me if you were able to provide me with the following services. That's not what I've learned in the language.
Although I guess, if you get like a stock phrase, maybe that is it. You just, if you don't know what to do, you just sort of start pasting stock phrases together that gets you in sort of the right direction.
Well, and it actually agrees with sort of the local way of learning stuff, because education here, for better or for worse, is, mostly for worse, actually, is it's heavily memorization based.
How do you feel, Professor?
Yeah. It's very frustrating sometimes, actually, because, like, I think we take it for granted in the States how much we are taught to, like, do critical reasoning and stuff and figure out why things are the way they are. And it's really... You've read Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, right?
That book suckered me into going to grad school.
His evil plan. Yes, it's not all doing physics equations at strip clubs, unfortunately.
So we should add that this is an autobiography of Richard Feynman, who was a Sort of an awesome physicist. I think my brother would call him a life artist.
Yeah. And a Nobel Prize winner and a generally like eccentric, awesome dude.
Yeah, so he was a Nobel Prize winner. I think he recorded an album of him playing bongos.
Yeah, he was a bongo player for some time.
I think he was a painter too. He worked on the Manhattan Project, where he basically caused a lot of trouble by picking people's locks. Right. And he did a lot of his theoretical physics work sitting in strip clubs.
Yeah, I think the rationale was...
Academia is exactly like that now.
What was his rationale was basically like, the food's cheap, it's not very busy during the day, the scenery's not bad.
It's kind of Barney Stinson-esque.
Yeah. I mean, it's not entirely a bad theory. He was also a bit of a lady charmer guy, so that might have fed into it a bit.
Did I already try to pitch you on my Richard Feynman narrates The Maltese Falcon?
No, I have not. Well, how would that go? Because he does sound like... The funny thing is he's this brilliant guy, but he does sound like a kind of tough Brooklyn dude.
Exactly. So it'd be called The Maltese Feynman.
Ah, I like that.
Or actually, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman would work too.
It always sort of bothered me that it was Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, and not Surely
Not Doctor?
Dr. Feynman, yeah.
Well, maybe he was joking before he finished his PhD.
It might have been, yeah, well, there was a story called that in the book, and I can't remember if maybe that was before he finished his doctorate. Hard to say.
You will be completely unsurprised to know that I have the book right here.
Yeah, I have it in the other room. I mean, I can't reach through the wall, but yeah, it's close by. But anyway, so this is a bit of well, this is not off track, but, one cool thing about Feynman, and if you listeners have not ever heard Richard Feynman speak, there's a million great YouTube videos of him. But the great thing about Feynman is he's able to explain things in very natural language, right? And, talking about quantum physics and stuff, the natural language is always going to be an approximation. But it's pretty good approximations that he gives you, right? So, he'll say something like, well, you see, the strong nuclear force is, you can think of it as like a rubber band that holds two things together.
Oh, no. We have a much better Feynman example. Hold on one second.
We could.
Well, we'll splice it in. But it's where he talks about waves in a pool.
Okay.
It's hilarious. And I can't find the YouTube link. I'll just play it.
Pool. Somebody dives in, and she's not too pretty, so I can think of something else. I think of the waves and things that have formed in the water. And when there's lots of people have dived in the pool, there's a very great choppiness of all these waves all over the water. And to think that it's possible, maybe, that in those waves is a clue as to what's happening in the pool.
Yeah, so that's Richard Feynman.
Right. So yeah, I mean, that's a short explanation. But,
whoa, what just happened there?
I think Feynman's ghost is coming back to haunt us. So it's very natural. I mean, the one I was starting to go into is basically, if you want to think about the strong force, like most of the forces we see in everyday life, right? Like magnetism or of gravity or whatever get weaker with distance. But the strong force gets stronger with distance up to a point. And I don't know if this is his explanation, but the one I always hear is like, well, imagine a rubber band holding two things. You pull them further apart, the band pulls them together again. You pull them far enough apart, the band breaks. Now, in this case, that's not a perfect analogy because something different happens when the strong force distance limit gets exceeded. But anyway, point being, like, that's a pretty good, quick explanation of how a very complex phenomenon works, right? But anyway, so there's this chapter in the book about when he went to Brazil, I think, and he was observing the students there, and they were all able to recite these equations verbatim and so forth. But then he would ask them, like, so let's say I have a such and such, I like roll a ball down a hill at this speed or whatever, like what happens? He'd set up some basic kind of physics situation. But, they would have no idea how to actually translate these equations they'd memorized and these definitions that they'd memorized into real-life applications. They didn't really, they had memorized these things but didn't really understand them. And that's, it's not the case everywhere, but it is pretty characteristic of the educational system here as well. That there's a lot of memorization and not a lot of focus on understanding.
Maybe you should be the Richard Feynman of India, or Malaysia.
Well, I mean, I do, what I find is that our brighter students certainly are able to overcome that quite a bit in, the 3 years that they're with us. I think it takes, because we're a British school and most of our people are, well, all of our people are non-local in our department. And, so we do teach things in a more Western fashion, and I'm always explaining things like the way I understand them, not with some fancy-sounding textbook sentence that is, sounds good but doesn't make the thing easy to understand necessarily. But, it certainly takes a while to kind of break people out of this memorization-based mentality. But we were going somewhere with this, and now I'm completely forgotten.
Stilted translations.
Oh, right. Yeah, so I think that is how... So, like, when I took the Malay class, I saw how they tried to... and no offense, I doubt she's a podcast listener, but the woman who was teaching us, her idea of teaching us the language, and granted it was a short, 10-week class or whatever, was basically to hand us a printout with a bunch of phrases on it and be like, all right, memorize these. There was no, teaching us about... or very little of, teaching us about the grammatical structure of the language, how you make the words with, as we talked about earlier, Malay is kind of one of these agglutinative languages that you start with a root word and then add various prefixes and suffixes and infixes to it to make new words. There was none of that. There was no grammar or linguistics. There was just all right, these are the phrases, learn them. And I think that's how people here have learned to speak English too. They've just learned how to string these phrases together, and sometimes the consequences are kind of hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, you can sort of, on the other hand, that's sort of how babies learn. I can never tell if that actually works for adults or not, though.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a hardcore, the classic example is when I took French myself, which is, we've already revealed. What?
Oui?
Oui? Yes, I know that much. The classic example is the phrase, although I did, as we said before, I got a C- in French, but not for lack of...
I beat you in Japanese!
Yes, I know. Well, it was not for, what's funny is it would have been a fail probably if I hadn't, basically aced the test, but it was definitely weighed down by my attendance scores.
Oh, I think that was the only thing that saved me. It's you're clearly trying, you're just not good at this.
No, to the extent that, you can understand French in a semester of French, I understood it okay, but the great example of this is the phrase, a phrase like qu'est-ce que c'est in French, right? Which to an English speaker looks insane, because it seems to have many more letters and hyphens and apostrophes in it than such a simple phrase as qu'est-ce que c'est should have, right?
This still drives me nuts, to be totally honest.
Well, but...
Why write them if you're not going to say them?
Well, that's true. I mean, again, we're coming from a language that has some of the most bizarre pronunciation rules in the world, so I can't really throw stones there. But what's weird is, one always learns in French class on day 2 that qu'est-ce que c'est means what is it? But it really means literally, what is it that it is, right? That is how you would translate qu'est-ce que c'est grammatically if you did it word for word, right?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that before.
Well, because it's que.
No, you're totally correct.
And S, is... I have to,
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and then another ka that is now a that. And se, which is se, contracted, it is. So what is it that it is? And to me, that makes much more sense, and it's easier to spell and easier to, know something about the language than when you're okay, I see how this language is structured now. So I certainly favor a structure-based. How do you remember that if you don't have any framework to hang it on?
Yeah, no, that's that's gonna bug me all day. So I have another foreign language question for you.
Okay.
So as I was telling you earlier, I went to this. There's a series of concerts that are free. They're right outside my house. So whenever I get bored on the weekends, I just wander around down there. And I found it was much easier to understand them when they were singing than when they were actually just talking.
Yeah, that's what people say a lot, yeah.
Oh, really?
I've heard that said before.
Okay. I always would have guessed it would go the opposite way.
Well, another weird thing is, to me at least, it always sounds to me like when people sing, their accent goes away.
Yes, so that's what I think it was, that she didn't sound quite so Quebec-y. Instead of more just like a French person.
Well, or if you even think about keeping it in English, if you think about the Beatles, when they're singing a song, they don't sound nearly as Liverpudlian as, you know what I mean? You can still tell they're English, but it's not nearly as strong an accent as it is when they're speaking, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
And so I think it is true that probably well, it's probably a few different things. One of which is that the cadence is dictated by the music and not by the linguistics as much, right?
Oh, and it's probably much slower, too.
Well, it's much slower. But, one of the hardest things I find, like, when I start to learn a foreign language, and I assume you might be the same way, is that old Far Side cartoon about how dogs perceive humans?
Yep.
The one I'm talking about here. So this is kind of the way I hear foreign languages when I just know a little bit of them. So the Far Side cartoon is basically like the guy saying like, well, you see, Ginger, blah, blah, blah. And well, that was a terrible example, actually, because what the dog sees is blah, 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 Ginger, blah, 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 Ginger, blah, 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 Ginger, right? But what I get is like a pop-out effect, right? Where I'll be hearing like blah, 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 and then I'll hear the one word I know in the sentence.
Yes, then you get all excited. You're like, yes!
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I understand. No, wait, I understood just that one word. So, part of that is that I think, and I might know more of the words than just that one, but that one was the only one that was isolated enough for me to catch it, right?
Yep.
So I think it is the case that a big part of it is just like learning to hear the cadence of speech. And that's not as much an issue in singing, obviously.
How does singing work in like a tonal language like Chinese, I wonder?
I don't know. I don't know if you can ignore the tone or if the tone is built into the musical progression. I'm not sure.
You think it's just you have to sort of pick your words so that the tone works? Or change your melody?
I'm not sure.
Find a Chinese person and let's ask.
There are many of them at my university, so yes, I will check on that.
Okay, I'll send you a net.
Oh, to catch a Chinese person with?
Mm-hmm. And a durian.
I'll just put a durian, under a box propped up with a stick, and I'm sure I'll catch a bunch of Malaysians that will answer my questions for me.
Oh God, we're going on 2 hours again.
Yeah, so we should talk about a couple other of our topics, but before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you, partly just personally, but maybe this also relates to what we were talking about earlier. Have you been to the restaurant Au Noir in Montreal yet?
I have not. Is it good? Is this the one where the blind people work?
Yeah, this is the one where the food is served in pitch black and the wait staff are all blind people. And you eat your meal in complete darkness.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I want to try it.
It's kind of expensive, but not like insanely expensive. I think it might cost you like $50 or something for a...
Oh, why did I click on the French menu? Although I guess the dollar sign is the same.
Well, yes.
$34. That's pretty reasonable.
For like an entree or right? Well, it's a prefix.
It's prefix,
menu, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so it's a nice-ish night out, but not anything insane.
No, that might be worth it.
I thought it was fairly cool.
There's one in New York too. It's ninja themed though.
That's it's a little strange.
Well, because they sneak around in the dark.
I guess, but how much do you need to sneak when it's completely pitch black?
Also, how do you know if it's ninja themed if it's completely pitch black?
Well, excellent point. Maybe they just tell people a different thing every week. Like, oh yes, this one is
it's a pirate
themed. Yeah.
Black hole themed. Hey, want to open a restaurant?
Yes, it can be any theme you imagine. But yeah, it's pretty cool. But I was just going to say, like,
is there a Malaysian one?
No, I don't think so. And frankly, I want to see whatever food I'm eating in Malaysia. I don't trust Malaysian food enough, for the most part, to eat it in pitch blackness. But it is interesting, and we were talking quite a bit because I went there with a bunch of psychologists and neuroscientists. So of course we were talking a lot about how the presence or absence of light affected the taste of the food and so forth. But
I wonder if I could get my boss to expense it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we had any great insights about it.
Blah blah blah. Can't hear you.
Yeah, but
attention FRSQ, pay no attention to this man.
Right.
So the website is kind of squeaking me out because it keeps talking about how it's a sensual experience until I realize that is actually completely the right word.
It is the right word. Well, and it is true because part of it is you experience your food in a way that you don't normally, insofar as, like, to find it, you often have to touch it with your fingers, which you don't often do when you're eating, like, steak, right? But
well, not in public.
Well, yes. I mean, certain food you do, right? Like, I know quite well what pizza feels like.
But it's true, but you normally don't have to, like, stumble around looking for the pizza.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, there have been times, 3 a.m. There might have been some stumbling on the way to the pizza, but anyway. But yeah, so it is, you certainly feel your food a lot more than you ordinarily would, because you're punting around for it in the pitch blackness. But I suspect we would have all had like maybe the more intense taste experience that you might predict if we had been shutting up and not talking to each other about the experience.
That's very meta.
Well, because our senses were largely focused on like discussing the experiences we were having it, so probably not the like deprivation chamber it otherwise could have been. But anywho, so do you want to talk? We want to do a lightning round of one or two other topics? Because
sure, yeah, it has been sort of food heavy.
The naked mole rat thing was cool, but
go into it. I admit I did not read it, so I would love to hear about it.
Okay, so this is lightning round stuff here, because this is actually pretty new stuff. This was on, it was on the news portion of Science magazine, so, the popular section, but I think the research itself was published also in Science or Nature, a good journal like that. Basically, it's just discussing a new series of studies on naked mole rats and why they don't appear to get cancer. So they live quite a long time for rodents. I think something like 20 years or something like that. Pretty long time.
Oh, really?
Maybe not, but let's see.
That's a long time for a rat.
Well, it says they outlive things like beavers and gray squirrels by... Beavers and gray squirrels last a couple of decades, but naked mole rats outlive those larger animals by 10 years. So yeah, they could live up to like 30 years or so.
I guess a squirrel would live much longer if it did not run in the middle of a road.
Well, right. And of course, like, some things live much longer in captivity than they do when they're not being eaten by other things, right?
It apparently holds the record for the oldest rodent at 28 years.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, I'm older than the oldest rat. Yes.
And also hairier, and, generally I think slightly better looking, because naked mole rats... Sorry, that was a bit of an insult. Significantly better looking.
Wow, backhanded.
Sorry. I didn't mean that, but yes, I think one can definitively say that we are better looking than naked mole rats. Because, they're pretty ugly looking, but anyway, they don't get cancer, right? They've never been observed to get cancer in any laboratory setting. And anyway, the way they think it is due to, so this is a group, let's maybe give them a shout out. The person cited here on Science Mag is Vera Gorbanova of University of Rochester. But anyway, they studied them for a while after noticing this, and they currently think it's because of basically a substance in the cellular matrix, or in the intercellular spaces. So just the spaces between cells. The consistency is much different than like a lot of other mammal cells or animal cells in general. It's basically kind of a gooey stuff that seems to keep cells from clumping together in quite the same way. And they think it's because of this kind of physical substance controlling the way the cells kind of stick to each other that prevents things from clumping together into tumors, and therefore like cancer cells kind of are limited in how much they can spread, or individual cells might become cancerous, but then they just kind of die out because they don't clump into these big, fast-growing tumors. So I just thought that was kind of cool and kind of a neat...
that is cool.
Neat study. It's one of those things that, like, can you use this to cure cancers? Who knows? Because without genetically re-engineering... So they went on and did this, like, they added... wait a minute.
It looks like did they knock out a tumor suppressor?
Well, right. They induced, or at least... to produce cancerous cells, but the naked mole rat still did not show cancer cells or tumors producing, or uncontrolled growth, the article says. But yes, when they did do things, so they don't go into details here, but when they did things to interfere with this, it's basically a complex sugar, I believe, that is present in this extracellular matrix. So when they interfered with it, they did get tumors not only in vitro, but also in live animals. So they say the next step is, of course, to knock in the gene for this complex sugar into like a rat and see if, or a mouse probably, and then see if that makes the mice cancer resistant. But of course, the problem is, can you use this to treat cancer in humans without genetically re-engineering us? And who knows, of course.
Well, we apparently have some, but we have about 15 grams per person.
Right, and it's, I believe, a different form also, right?
Yeah, the mole rat one looks like it's way larger.
Well, it says it's about 5 times the size of the variant found in mice, rats, and humans.
That seems larger. It's a weird-looking molecule.
Yeah, I haven't looked it up. But anyway, so we don't have to go into detail about that, but that's kind of neat. We'll link the Science Mag article.
Cool. Do I have anything?
What was stuff that lives in clouds? Was
the
bacteria layer?
I was super excited about this, and for the record, so I was super excited about this. I found it like somewhere random, and then 2 days later it was on the front page of Reddit. But I heard of it first, damn it. So I'm a science hipster.
I thought that because I actually did see the same thing or something that I thought was what you were alluding to on Reddit. But I'll give you cred.
Okay, thank you. Can I get some skinny jeans and fancy glasses?
Yeah, sure. I'll get right on that.
Please don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, so apparently stuff lives in clouds. So actually, I guess this has been known for a long time. But clouds are apparently just chock-a-block full of bacteria and algae and things like that. And, presumably passing birds.
Right.
Yeah, so apparently clouds, especially like the big thunder clouds, contain a fair amount of water. And this I thought was kind of neat. So bacteria sort of can get sucked up into clouds and, hang out there and travel around.
Right.
But one of the cool things is that some bacteria might actually be able to form their own clouds. So they release this substance, I think it's dimethyl sulfide or sulfite.
Yeah.
And it serves as sort of a nucleation site, so it lets water droplets sort of clump together and form into clouds.
Right.
And so this sort of produces wind, which sucks the bacteria sort of off the surface of the water, where they get dragged up into the clouds, and then they disperse themselves that way. So I just thought that was kind of crazy, because it's sort of a staple of science fiction, right? You have these sort of like big bloopy jellyfish things living in the clouds. Yeah. But it turns out it's real. There's stuff living in clouds.
Yeah, and these are, well, it says they found E. coli in their samples. What I was wondering is if it was like, terrestrial bacteria, if it was, different stuff that lives up there.
I think it's a mix, but it's, as you'd imagine, fairly hard to just like go into a cloud.
Yeah.
But they found things like...
I store all of my bacteria in the cloud.
Yeah. But I think they found bacteria like ocean bacteria, like way, way inland in a cloud. And so it sort of goes both ways. So they form the clouds, and then they come back down to Earth on the rain, and then the cycle sort of repeats in a gross propagation of stuff.
Well, it says in the caption here, E. coli streptococcus. So it does sound like at least some of it is pretty ordinary stuff.
Oh, so this was related to that. So some people think that it might actually be how, diseases can spread.
That they go all the way up to the 30,000 feet above sea level and drop back down again?
I think that is, super duper speculative, but it would be kind of cool.
That sounds like the plot of, another apocalyptic fiction type movie.
Add that to the list.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of disease spreads, I overheard this cool fact at a coffee shop last night.
Okay.
So you know how you can track influenza or whatever around? You make a graph of how many people have it in each spot, per week. Right. So it tracks the flow of money surprisingly well. So if you take down the serial numbers and see where they pop up next, which I guess it makes a lot of sense, and it's sort of blindingly obvious in one way and also really cool in another.
Well, they both. There's they often say that one of the main places you get bacteria from people is on money, but it's also true that I guess they both just correlate with the number of human to human interactions of any sort, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so unfortunately, I think probably because we are now at.
Yeah, we should probably shut up.
The two things that we pledged we would talk more about this time explicitly in episode 2, which was screenplay analysis algorithms, and this thing about ignoring background motion and its relation to IQ. We didn't talk about either of those. We just talked mostly about food.
I really need to read that paper. So we'll talk about that next time, for real.
Yes. For realsies this time, we'll talk about screenplay algorithms and IQ and background motion. And that's all, I think, for lightning round stuff. What is this about whiskey stones?
Oh,
is that a lightning round topic?
Nah, it's not that interesting.
What is a whiskey stone? I don't even know.
All right, maybe it is a lightning round topic.
All right, tell me what whiskey stones are.
So there are a bunch of Kickstarters for things you can put into your either your whiskey or your coffee to heat or cool it as necessary.
Right.
And they're all kind of crap.
What? Why? You mean these are just like artificial ice cubes that don't melt your stuff, right?
Exactly. The whiskey stones are in fact stones, which are supposed to have some mystical connection with the whiskey. But the thing is, so materials have their specific heat. So it takes like a certain amount of heat to heat up 1 gram of this 1 degree.
Right.
And the thing is, though, that's not actually how your beverages get cooled. So if you have it takes way, way more energy to cool, to turn 1 gram of liquid, or 1 gram of ice into 1 gram of liquid than it does to change the temperature. So the whiskey stones actually don't do crap, basically.
Oh, okay. So just putting a cold, solid object into a beverage does not actually make it that cold.
Right. I'm trying to look up the actual number, but it's a huge factor.
Well, that makes quite a bit of sense, right? Because, I guess it does to me, right? Because the thing that, you're basically, when ice melts, you're basically breaking the crystalline structure of the ice. And it's breaking that crystalline structure in addition to raising the temperature of the actual molecules. That requires a large amount of energy to put it in. In other words, it's taking energy out of the beverage, which makes it colder, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, in other words, if you don't have a state change, and you just have proximity to a colder thing, that doesn't do much, huh?
Yeah, I'm trying to... what's the definition of a joule? Do you remember?
You're the definition of a joule to me, Matt Krause. What do you mean now? I didn't know there was a technical definition of a joule. I was foolish enough to just Google, and of course I got Joule the singer.
No, Joule.
Oh, a joule. Oh, sorry. I was like, where are we going? I was thinking stones and jewels. All right. Neither of which has anything to do with Joule the singer.
Okay, so 1 joule is the heat required to raise the temperature of a gram of water by about 1/4 degree Celsius.
Right.
All right, so 1 joule gets you 1/4 degree. However, going from water at 0 degrees to ice at 0 degrees takes 334 joules. So that's,
wow.
That is a crap ton more energy, to use the technical scientific term.
Yes.
Or I think that's 1.5 metric butt loads.
Yes, I believe so. Sorry, I was just trying to think of more Joule the singer related jokes.
Well, she's from Alaska, so
how many joules does it take to save your soul, or something like that?
So don't buy whiskey stones. But I learned this trick, which is this is veering dangerously close to hints from Heloise or something.
Yeah.
But if you have a beer which is warm and you would like it to become cold, what you can do is wrap it in a wet paper towel and throw it in the freezer for 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay.
And so the water on the paper towel freezes because there's not very much of it. And then that sucks out, this massive number of joules of...
Yeah, that's clever.
So you can go from a room temperature beer or soda to a cold one in probably 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's cool. So basically this is for things that are sealed that you want to cool down faster.
Yeah, I imagine you could do it with something that's not sealed.
Well, if it's not sealed, you can drop in an ice cube, right? So
even if you do drop in the ice cube, right, what you should do is stir it to get the sort of to get the melting going.
Well, right. To get the ice continually coming into proximity with the warmest parts of the beverage.
Yep.
Yeah. I've certainly noticed that just around here where cold beverages are a way of life. If I just drop the ice in and wait a minute or two, one part of the beverage can still be quite warm if you aren't constantly stirring it. Surprisingly so, because actually, I don't know, I guess I never noticed that before here where things are so much hotter.
But you should totally try the paper towel thing. It works like a champ.
I should try that. Well, so my question is, I guess the thing to do is if you don't want your beverage watered down, just have, water, just have regular ice, but encased in some kind of plastic, casing, like the ice cubes, like the ones that you buy, right? Like the artificial ice cubes you buy, which I assume are really just plastic cubes with water in them.
Yeah, so we had some of those kids that were, they're like little spheres with water or something in them. And so those go between freezing and not freezing, right? So you get the sort of...
Right, so they would work unlike whiskey stones.
Yep. The whiskey stones are literally chunks of rocks sold to hipsters for insane amounts of money.
So you just freeze the rocks and drop them in your whiskey, huh?
Yeah.
That's not where the phrase "on the rocks" actually comes from, is it?
I don't think so.
I assume that's just more like, ice looks like rocks.
Are you also on Wikipedia?
Maybe.
It doesn't say anything useful.
Well, we now know it's an album by the Byron Band. And it's also a band, a British, Dutch, Brazilian rock band.
That is a genre I would...
What's most interesting about this is it claims it's an international rock band formed by British, Dutch, and Brazilian musicians, but as far as I can tell, it's only got 2 people in it. Okay, no, they've got some other... It's one British guy and one Dutch guy, and then they got a bunch of Brazilians kind of backing them up. How many Brazilians, you ask? Brazilians and Brazilians of them.
Thank you, zombie lisping fine man.
Oh
no, Sagan. Damn it, that was Sagan.
What?
Wasn't Billions and Billions Sagan?
Yes. Billions and billions, yes. Yes, Carl Sagan loved to say billions.
We should have a physicist clip show at some point.
Yeah, well, we could kind of fold them in. We could also play one of those. What was the thing you linked me with Brian Cox or whoever it was? No, Brian.
Oh, Symphony of Science.
Yeah, Symphony of Science. Well, I kind of briefly thought about that as like our theme song, but I think it doesn't work quite as well as the theme song. But maybe we could play it at the end of something. But anyway, all right. Well, I suppose we should.
Oh, we should sign off. We should also introduce ourselves afterwards, so you can cut that in the beginning.
Oh yes. So, well, I think it's good for. Let's just do the introduction at the end. So, hello, welcome to our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Hello. I ruined that. Let's try it again.
No, I think it's actually funnier if we actually do the introduction at the very end of the podcast, and the first, hour and 45 minutes were just a digression.
It would be very typical too.
Yeah. So
yeah, welcome to what remains of our podcast. I'm Matt Krause.
I'm Matt Johnson, and yes, we'd like to talk to you about science. So go back in time, an hour and a half, or whatever this episode ends up being, and listen to it. And now...
And today we'll have talked about...
Yes, exactly. Well, that was a great discussion there, Matt Krause. So I guess we should be going now.
All right, see you next time.
Wait, before we do that, we should do... It's going to be so disjointed. We should do our website and everything. So if you enjoyed listening to this podcast and would like to contact us, or if you'd like to send us hate mail or, pictures of yourself or whatever... we have a website. It's SSHHMM at SSHHMM.wordpress.com. Our email address, and by the way, this is a minor correction to last time. I think once we briefly said it was SSHHMM@gmail, but that's not true. That's some random person. And I've gotten enough emails directed to the wrong Matthew Johnson that I'm very sensitive to this. So don't email that random person, whoever they are. It's Super Science Happy Hour, all run together at gmail.com. We couldn't get the initials for that one. And listen to us on iTunes. There's a link to the RSS feed on the website. You can also listen to episodes, stream them directly from the website. And if you have feedback about what other podcatchers you might want us to integrate with, let us know.
Or topics. We love topics.
Topics. If you'd like to be a guest star... we should probably, once we get our technical stuff sorted out, we'll have some of our friends on, hopefully as guest stars. But most of our friends are neuroscientists. So if you are Stephen Hawking or another sort of physicist or chemist or astrobiologist or whatever, and would like to come on, we would like to have you. So let us know.
All right. See you next time.
Adios. And we should count off.
3.
3.
Two.
Oh, we're going down. Sorry.
Oh. 3.
Right, 3, 2. Balls. Let's count up. Do the
0.
1 and 2.
2
and 3.
3.
Wait, we did this. We did this right before. So
wait, we weren't counting the right way.
Well, yeah, but we need to be in sync, right? So let's try again. All right, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
4.
Are you? You're coming in behind me, though.
No, we're pretty synced. It might be Skype delay.
I think there's a lot of Skype delay this time because I'm hearing you I'm hearing your numbers on my ands.
Wait, I have a much better idea.
Go ahead.
Why don't I just unplug my headphones? then it will be synced by default.
You mean just for a minute while I...
Yeah, for the count.
Yeah, if you want. I mean, I think we should try to synchronize also, but...
Okay. You say things loudly.
All right. Hello. My name is Matt Johnson. I am the world's greatest lover.
No, that won't sync at all.
Just that your computer just refused to make that sound.
She said she was surprised by how not serious we are.
Does she have some misconception that you are a profoundly serious man?
I mean, I have a monocle and a top hat and everything.
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
Like a veritable Nick Turk Brown.
What's that?
Like a veritable Nick Turk Brown up here.
Oh. Well, you are turning Canadian. I really think so.
Well, is that better or worse than Japanese?
I don't know. By the way, have you looked at our download statistics recently?
Who are these people?
I don't know. But it's still way more than I expected. I mean, I don't think we're anywhere near sponsorship or anything yet. But that's still, shocking.
Who would you imagine would sponsor us?
I don't know. Somebody that gives us mugs at SFN?
Oh, no, I want the laser pen. I never got a laser pen.
Is that just a pen with a laser pointer?
No, they write your name on it with a laser.
Oh.
Which is supposed to make you think that this laser would be good for, delicately manipulating your cells.
That is kind of cool, but of all the mental images that laser pen evoked when you said that, that is the least interesting of them.
Well, you wanted like a lightsaber fountain pen?
Well, like something that I could, write.
It burns your words into the paper?
Exactly, kind of like a Harry Potter thing.
I need this. Make it happen.
Sounds like something Dolores Umbridge would use as punishment.
They did have that quill.
Yeah, exactly. So you just, replace that with a laser. Yeah.
That'll be our giveaway in 20 years.
The Super Science Happy Hour laser pen.
With your name engraved on it, but with a regular pen.
Ooh, good touch.
The booth is just some guy with a Sharpie.
And then, if we made the laser strong enough, the pen really could be mightier than the sword at that stage.
Well, would it be stronger than a lightsaber?
Well, I mean, it would be essentially a lightsaber, I guess, but...
More like a light fountain pen.
But what, you have to keep dipping it in the light well to get more light?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, sure.
So this goes nicely with that, actually.
Oh, wait, sorry, you're siloning it a little bit. Say again?
Oh, so this goes nicely with that, actually.
Oh, you completely siloned. Maybe let's put
all the humans. Kill all the humans.
Sure?
Kill all the humans.
Now I can't tell if you're doing it on purpose or not. Still there? Bending Rodriguez? Okay.
Am I back to normal?
You're kind of still... Shall we leave the recording running and quickly disconnect Skype and reconnect?
Sure.
All right. Disconnect.
All right.
I'll call you back in 2 seconds. Oh, okay, there.
It's funny because I was doing the same thing and then remembered to stop just before I hit connect.
Okay. I first did the I Dream of Jeannie theme, and then I switched to Gilligan's Island for hold music as I was trying to connect to you. Are you playing it now?
No, that was Stephen Hawking shouting in.
Oh yes, we should have. One of these episodes we should just have Stephen Hawking as a guest on the podcast. Because how would anyone know it's not really him?
Did you know he had one of the first synthesizers?
I mean, I sort of figured it. So basically, you're saying Stephen Hawking is a synthesizer hipster.
Yeah. Well, Ray Kurzweil made it for him before he became a crackpot.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, I am catty today. Yes. Yeah. And there's actually a DJ Hawking who has remixes overdubbed with this. And apparently Stephen Hawking loves it.
He seems to have a bit of a sense of humor about things.
Because, the guy got all sorts of hate mail, like, how could you? And then he had a letter from Stephen Hawking being like, this is fantastic.
This is awesome. Yeah, we should
link to him. MC Hawking, my bad.
Oh, yeah, MC Hawking. Well, we should invite Stephen Hawking to come on our podcast. I would love to, Matthew.
That was pretty good.
That was my... I'll just insert Fred the Mac voice saying that later in post-production.
I would love to, Matthew.
They finally did replace his synthesizer, right? Because I know he always complained that the one thing he didn't like about his old synthesized voice was that it had, to the extent that, a robo voice has it, it had an American accent and not a British accent like his. All right, happy sciencing, folks. See you next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Do I hit stop or record again? I can never remember.